Hello everybody. I just want to take a few minutes and go over a couple of things with you, kind of help you think through some of the stuff that's going on in this country. The problem I have with the way people are reacting is not just the so-called left, and I'm going to clarify that in a minute, but people that voted for Trump for various reasons, which is fine, think that we're out of the woods, and that one incident in a timeline of events is going to change or fix everything. People, it just is not that way. So what I want to go over today is I want to go over some intel. I want to go over intel itself and how it works, the principles, just the basics. We're not talking about technology. We're not talking about all that stuff. Just basically how it works. Once you get intel, what do you do with it? How do you use it? And what are we seeing now as things are being played out since the elections? What does the intel from previous days and months and years tell us? This is what we need to think about, because you can't just take a look at the election and go, oh, Trump won the presidency. Trump this and Trump that, Trump the wall, Trump the economy, Trump, go back and take a look at the dots. Intel is a lot like a dot-to-dot picture that you played with, that you colored in when you was a kid. You started with one and you went through whatever the numbers were, and you followed the lines and it created a picture. And that's a lot like what Intel is. A crazy app just went nuts. Okay. This is the basics of intel. Here I have a piece of paper, and you see thick lines and you see thin lines. Now at the top I have what you would consider a baseline. You have certain parameters and certain information that creates a baseline. Okay? The region that you're in, the type of people that you're looking at, the areas that you're viewing or observing, whether it be cities or towns or farms or mountains or valleys or whatever. You take all that into consideration based on what you're looking for. So let's say at the top we're going to create a in this particular area. This is the realm that we're looking at. We're going to say this is regions. And let's say, oh, Mr. General here, I got to find my camera. Mr. General here says, Specialist Wright, I want you to get into the helicopter and I want you to... Okay, we're back, and I don't know where we disconnected. So let's say we have dots, and we have dots in Y, and somebody says that dot's not important. So you move it over to P, or whatever, you move it off the board. Somebody else comes in and says, well, there's dots or there's activity in location X. It's very important, and it moves to the top of the chart. And these dots move around, and the more dots that accumulate in a certain area is what you're looking at. It creates a picture. You also have to ask yourself, who's the source? What kind of information do we have? Do we have proof? Do we have documentation? Do we have photographs? Do we have video? Do we have credible information? Do we have evidence? Okay? Now we're going to get off that. That's just basic, fundamental, in-your-face, elementary intel gathering. And I don't know what all you picked up. If that didn't go through, then I will do another video later and redo that. So here's the thing. Now Trump is elected president. It comes out that he got the popular vote, he got the electoral college vote, and Trump is going to fix everything. But wait a minute. Follow the dots. Go way back. Let's start with Bush and the Patriot Act. What happened with the Patriot Act? What did it do? It opened up the door for the next presidents. Well, first of all, it opened up the door to create Homeland Security. Why do we need Homeland Security when we have the FBI? What does Homeland Security do? Well, basically it puts everybody under one umbrella and they can communicate. I'm going to tell you, that didn't fix anything. You know, the FBI doesn't like the ATF doesn't like the DEA doesn't like ICE doesn't like customs, and around it goes. It didn't fix a doggone thing. And what it did was it created an umbrella for surveillance on the American people. Dot. Okay? It's a dot. Then you come along and you have the NDAA, the National Defense Appropriation Act. What does the NDAA do? Well, in its original form is very good. It funds our military, a very necessary function. The NDAA doesn't appropriate funds. Our soldiers, our Marines, our seamen, and our airmen do not get paid. They don't get the equipment they need. They don't get the armament they need. They don't get the small arms they need. They don't get the missiles they need. They don't get the diesel they need. They don't get the jet fuel they need. They don't get the food they need. The NDAA, the National Defense Appropriation Act, is an ongoing necessary thing. But, as in all legislation, the government decided to throw in a little pork. And in sections 1021 through 1023, they declared the United States for the past 11 years a battle zone. Now, why did they do that? Because it does two things. It prepares the United States to wage war on our soil, which the military is designed to alleviate that problem and not let war come to our soil. And number two, in sections 1031 through 1033, it allows the military to come into your home and mine, into your private space, into your vehicles, to black bag you, haul you off, detain you, and torture you indefinitely, so such as there is a time of war. Well, we're under battle, according to the NDAA. So until they lift the NDAA or not approve it, these things are always over our head. Dot. Well then, why would they be tapping everybody's phones and tapping everybody's internet? Dot. Then you come up to March the 9th of 2012. And Obama signs Executive Order 13603. Now you go over that line by line because every line in that executive order is important. Every single line. And that executive order is not necessarily different in some respects in executive orders that go way, way back to Roosevelt and beyond. But Obama, in his infinite wisdom, decided to change a few things, or a lot of things, that is not good for the American people. And I will say the first thing that he changed was, not only is this executive order supposed to give the government the sole authority to dominate, commandeer, take over, and run everything necessary to compel the enemy from an invasion during a national disaster, or a national emergency of where we would be invaded. That is what it was designed for originally. But Obama changed one simple sentence, and it said not only to include during time of war or invasion, but to include time of peace, or during peacetime. So he give himself and the government, well, actually give himself and the Secretary of Homeland Security this authority, and basically weeded out the Congress. To commandeer communications, transportation, food, distribution, and communications means everything, including people, to employ people without compensation, and the list goes on and on and on. You read it for yourself. He can employ you, and he can do so and not pay you one red cent. And if you do not comply, he will give you one reprieve to the Secretary of Counterterrorism, and if you still don't comply, he'll throw you under the bus under the NDAA. Under the NDAA, you get no trial by jury. You get no trial in a court. So you can see where this is both unconstitutional. In the same executive order, Obama gives himself and the Secretary of Homeland Security the authority over all of this, and the authority to determine who is a national threat and who isn't, and what is a national threat and what isn't, and gives himself and the Secretary of Homeland Security the sole authority over the Department of Defense. Dot. The Pentagon is no longer running the show from the top. Dot. NORAD is not being run by the military. Well, yes, you have soldiers and Air Force people in there doing their jobs, but it's the suits and the ties in executive offices underground running NORAD. Dot. Then, last year, you had Obama federalizing all police. Dot. Hitler did that. Do you realize Hitler did that? All these things are things that Hitler did. Now, when he federalized all police, he mandated that they uphold international law. Dot. So that when you are pulled over in a vehicle, you do not know whether they're coming at you for speeding, for disobeying a traffic violation, if your license plate had a red flag with a certain letter on it from the IRS or from Homeland Security. You have no idea. You don't know if it's a county ordinance, a city ordinance, a state ordinance, a federal ordinance, or an international ordinance. Dot. By the way, that's unconstitutional. Now, this year, you have, on July the 1st, Obama giving himself the sole authority over the military to use the military to wage wholesale war on American people on American soil. Dot. And there's a whole host of other things that just are not coming to mind. But if you look them up and you do the homework and you follow the dots, you will see that this leads to somewhere, and it's not to we the people, by the people, for the people, constitutionally run government. It's not. Now, if you go back to before Obama signed the last two executive orders, but in the middle of the NDAA, and you look up, Panetta tells congressmen that the Pentagon is run by the UN. You will find Panetta saying when he was over the CIA that the Pentagon takes its orders from the UN and from NATO, and when Congress has a need to know when they're going to go to war, he'll let them know. Folks, once again, that's unconstitutional, and it's another dot that you can put up there with the NDAA Executive Order 13603, this last executive order from July the 1st. It's another dot. Now let me ask you a question. That dot leads to the UN. Who do you think is running the UN? Stop and think about the families, the Kissingers, the Rockefellers, and those top cabal families. Why would Panetta say that the Pentagon is being run by the UN? Because our Congress is no longer in charge. Why did all of Congress, except for one congressman, over the last 11 years, vote for the NDAA when it's unconstitutional? Why did they not stop Obama in his tracks? Dot. Now we have Trump as president. And Trump isn't going to fix any of these dots by himself. And he's against all of these dots by himself, if in fact he isn't a part of the plan. Now, let's take a look at before the election. We had Jade Helm 15 and Jade Helm 16. Those were real events. You have the special ops for the last 3 and 4 years doing training, exercises, and drills in major cities across the United States in so-called suppressed fire or blank firing. Let me tell you something. When you have blanks firing out of weapons and they've got muzzle suppressors on them, flash suppressors on them, you don't get flashes out of the end of the muzzle. At least not in my day, unless things have changed. But you look at the night firing and the rappelling into the major cities with the spec ops guys, and you see muzzle flash on the miniguns. You see muzzle flash here and muzzle flash there. And you say, why are they training like this? You see Spec Ops coming into Miami Beach in boats and ramming their boats up onto the docks. Then you have Jade Helm 15 and 16, where massive metric tons of military equipment is being shifted all over the place. Truckers reporting convoys going into areas. You have the UN stashing vehicles everywhere. And don't tell me they're not there. I've taken pictures of them. 100 UN vehicles in Hagerstown, Maryland, just past the AT&T at the Kellogg plant. 100 of them. Communications vehicles, first aid vehicles, fuel tankers, water cannons, communication vehicles, MRAPs, SUVs. And the week before the elections, they were gone. Then you have the Walmarts. Conspiracy theorists said, well, they've dug tunnels under the Walmarts. And no, well, that's just tinfoil. I'm going to tell you something. I have pictures of it. They got blast-proof doors by Connor Doors. The same people that put the doors on the bunkers in the Pentagon and the CIA. Blast-proof doors. Now you come up to the election and Trump wins. And Hillary does not give her concession speech until the next day. But she's on the phone. Why does Hillary have to be on the phone? Because she's calling Soros, her handler, the money man. She's calling whoever besides Soros. And they tell her and Bill, put on purple. And you've been hearing about the purple protest, the purple this and the purple that. You know what? That was a signal for these $18 an hour bus loads of people to go into the major cities across the country and start riots. That's what that is. The purple riots. Yeah, the purple protest. That's what that was. Look at the dots. Hillary had to get the next move because she didn't have plan B. She thought with the rigging of the elections, the ballots, and with the dead men voting, that she had the vote. But the American people spoke. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think the globalists are going to let go of this country? They got their hooks in so deep. You think they're just going to let go? You're out of your mind. They're coming for us. You better keep stashing ammo and food and keep your powder dry and your bolts locked and loaded. They're not going to let go. They've gone too far. They've been indoctrinating our kids for 45 plus years in the schools. And you think that Trump is going to fix this? You're out of your mind. Now you look at these people being protesting and they're being paid. And then you got the other mindless people. And then you got people, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about. You got people dividing this up between the left and the right. And I think it's deeper than that. This is deeper than that, people. And I'm going to explain this in the simplest terms possible. How many years and decades have we had liberal and conservative, Republican and Democrat as a checks and balances in this country, and it worked fine? It worked fine. Now all of a sudden the liberals are going off the deep end and smashing cars and burning people and shooting police and all this other stuff. I'm going to tell you what. It's not the liberal of yesterday. It's the communist of today. Now let me explain how this works. There's a guy in my hometown that I grew up with. He's older than I am. But he says, I am a registered Democratic voter. My grandfather fought in World War, and he takes a picture of his grandfather's uniform. A hero of America. Now, he's a Democrat, but he's a war hero. Are you following me? Part of the checks and the balances. He's a liberal. He still has some principle left, but he's a liberal. And he's not buying into the looting, and he's not buying into the protests of the vandalism and the violence and the shooting and the smashing and the burning. No, he's liberal. He's an old-time American liberal, a part of the checks and the balances. The people that are out there right now are not American. Now, they may have been born here. But they've been so indoctrinated and so brainwashed that they will follow these paid protesters, these purple paid protesters, and they are a part of the coming wave of communists that will divide the American people right down the middle. They will be the reason. Now, all they have to do, and you follow what I'm saying, all they have to do when Trump gets in is crash the economy and take his life and make Pence useless, and they got to come in and save the day. And when they come in and save the day, the hammer's coming down. Now, I could be wrong, but if you follow the dots, they're not going to give up. They're not. Now, that Democrat voter said, I've had so much enough and disappointment of the Democratic Party that I had to vote for Trump. Now, that's a liberal. Now, that's a liberal. That's not a communist. The communists voted for Hillary. That's if they weren't dead. The dead people and the communists and the brainwashed people voted for Hillary. A treasonous, lying, thieving, murderous individual that shouldn't even be walking the streets. But a communist doesn't care, because a communist wants to take over a free country. Now, I've been told, and Pastor John has been told, and others have been told, that we hate because we keep speaking the truth. And I'm here to tell you, as a veteran, and my son is a active duty Marine, and my uncles are veterans, that we have trained to go overseas to kill people and take them out like Hillary because they are a threat to this world. And yet we have people in this country voting for such people. And Obama's in on it too. It's a globalist thing. It's bigger than America. You better get your head in the game and put your game face on and get ready, because they won't give up. These people are not American, and those who were born here that are doing this stuff are traitors. And they can be lumped in with Obama and Hillary. They can stand trial, and they can hang by the rope or have a bullet. And I'm talking constitutional, so the brown shirts listening to this, don't even come knocking on my door. I'm talking about a bona fide constitutional trial. I'm not talking about a lynching. This is law. But the rest of you Americans, yeah, you get behind Trump, but don't you let any of this stuff pass you by, because it is not over. These people are not American. They're not American at heart. They might have been born here, but they have been so indoctrinated that they are communist. And America is not about communism, people. It's about freedom of the people. Freedom to do what is right. Freedom to make out of life what God calls you to do with it. Freedom to do for others as you would do unto yourself. That's not communism. Communism will take from you and give to somebody who doesn't deserve it. It's coming. They will use these riots to stir it up. They will get the gangs going, and they think that we're going to shoot them to defend ourselves, and we're going to have nothing left to protect ourselves with. You mark my words. And if I'm wrong, I'll eat crow, but I don't think so. But that's the difference between a liberal American and a communist that's out there trashing stuff right now. Stop and think about it. I'll see you on the flip side.